The Morgan family estate stood exactly as it had for the past century, 12 acres of manicured gardens surrounding a Georgian mansion that had graced countless architectural magazines. I parked my modest Volvo next to the line of luxury cars in the circular driveway, each one screaming old money and inherited privilege. My stepbrother Marcus's Porsche sat in Grandma's usual spot, a detail that would have infuriated her. But Grandma Eleanor wasn't here to object anymore. Her passing 2 weeks ago had set today's events in motion, though not in the way my step-family expected. Ms. Elizabeth, George, the elderly groundskeeper, touched his cap as I walked past. His knowing smile reminded me of all the afternoons I'd spent helping him tend the rose gardens while Marcus and my stepsister Victoria lounged by the pool, complaining about having to spend summers at boring old grandma's. The great oak door opened before I could reach for it. Hannah, the housekeeper who'd been here longer than I'd been alive, embraced me warmly. "Right on time, dear," she whispered. "They're all in the library, squabbling like vultures." I could hear them as I approached. The familiar voices of my step-family raised an argument. Dad had married Patricia when I was 10, bringing her 2 children into our quiet life. After his death 5 years later, they'd shown their true colors, slowly pushing me to the margins of the family while Patricia charmed her way into everyone's good graces. Everyone except Grandma Eleanor. "The summer house should be mine," Victoria's voice carried through the hallway. "I'm the one who spent every holiday with Grandma." "Only because you were banned from Monaco for that credit card scandal," I thought, remembering how Grandma had rolled her eyes at Victoria's sudden devotion. "The stock portfolio is the real prize," Marcus countered. And as the only one with an MBA, I had to bite back a laugh. His MBA had come from a diploma mill, bought with family money after he failed out of 3 legitimate universities. But that didn't stop him from calling himself a financial genius at every opportunity. The library doors were open, revealing the assembled family in all their entitled glory. Patricia perched on Grandma's favorite armchair like she already owned it, wearing the kind of black dress that was more fashion statement than mourning. Victoria sprawled on the leather sofa, scrolling through her phone while simultaneously arguing about her claim to the property. Marcus paced by the fireplace, his expensive shoes scuffing the antique rug Grandma had brought back from Morocco. Mr. Sullivan, the family lawyer, sat quietly at Grandma's desk, watching the performance with an expression I knew well. He'd called me last night. "You'll want to be there for this, Elizabeth." Eleanor made sure of that. I stepped into the doorway, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "What is she doing here?" Victoria didn't bother looking up from her phone. "Elizabeth." Patricia's voice dripped false concern. "Darling, this is really just for family." "I am family," I said quietly. "Grandma Eleanor was my father's mother." "Yes, but..." Patricia waved her hand dismissively. "Given the circumstances." "Given that you're not a blood Morgan," Marcus cut in, moving to stand between me and Mr. Sullivan. "This is for real family only." He stepped forward, his 6-foot frame trying to intimidate my 5'4". "We wouldn't want to waste your time. I'm sure you have some little apartment to get back to." The apartment he was referring to was actually a penthouse in the city's most exclusive building, not that they knew that. They all thought I was struggling, living off my modest teaching salary. They had no idea about the tech company I'd built, the investments I'd made, or most importantly, the conversation I'd had with Grandma Eleanor 6 months ago. Actually, I started, but Marcus was already pushing me back through the doorway. This is for real family only, he sneered, grabbing the heavy library doors. Go grade some papers, or whatever it is you do. The doors shut in my face with a decisive click. I smoothed my simple black dress, channel, though they'd never recognize it as such, and took a seat in the lobby's window alcove. Through the leaded glass, I could see the rose gardens Grandma and I had tended together, the bench where she'd sat me down last spring with a conspiratorial gleam in her eye. They think I'm getting senile, she'd said, sipping her tea, playing the doddering old woman while they circle like sharks. Let them think that. We'll show them what a Morgan woman can do. I checked my watch. The Morgan family crest on its face caught the light. Grandma's graduation gift to me, along with the seed money for my company. The only one of them worth anything, she declared, watching me accept my MBA from Stanford, while Marcus slept off a hangover and Victoria shopped in Paris. My phone buzzed. A message from my CFO. Morgan estate transfer complete. All paperwork filed. I smiled, settling back to wait. In the library, I could hear Marcus starting his practice speech about his plans for modernizing the estate. Victoria's whining about her emotional connection to the summer house. Patricia's smooth assertions about honoring Eleanor's wishes. Then suddenly, silence. Mr. Sullivan must have opened the envelope. The screaming started exactly as I'd expected. Victoria's high-pitched wail, Marcus's bellow of rage, Patricia's shocked gasp. She did again. This can't be legal. 6 months ago, she sold everything 6 months as a Joe. The library doors flew open. Marcus stormed out, face purple with rage, waving a document. This is impossible. Grandma would never. He froze, seeing me still seated calmly in the alcove. Hello, Marcus, I said softly. Ready to discuss the new rental terms for your wing of the house. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't just owning the estate, it's watching them realize who really owns them. The library had erupted into chaos. Victoria paced frantically, her designer heels clicking against the hardwood floors. Grandma Eleanor had restored herself. Patricia sat frozen in what was no longer her chair, her perfectly maintained facade cracking. And Marcus looked like he might actually explode. Mr. Sullivan, he sputtered. This has to be a mistake. Grandma wasn't. She couldn't. Your grandmother, Mr. Sullivan said calmly, was of perfectly sound mind when she sold the estate 6 months ago. In fact, she insisted on a complete psychological evaluation before proceeding, knowing you might try to contest it. I walked back into the library, taking my rightful place behind Grandma's desk. The leather chair still smelled faintly of her signature perfume. 6 months ago, Victoria whispered, sinking onto the sofa, when she was supposedly getting confused about her medications. When you were all too busy planning how to spend your inheritance to notice she was planning something of her own, I finished for her. Patricia found her voice first. But the money. Surely she didn't. I mean, the estate must have sold for millions. 27 million, to be exact, Mr. Sullivan supplied, which Mrs. Eleanor Morgan immediately reinvested in her granddaughter's technology company, Morgan Innovations. Another shocked silence. Your what? Marcus turned to me, his face a fascinating shade of purple. I opened my laptop, bringing up the company website. Morgan Innovations, currently valued at just over $3 billion. We specialize in AI-driven security systems and sustainable energy solutions. I smiled. Grandma was our biggest investor and most enthusiastic board member. But you're a teacher, Victoria shrieked. I teach one advanced computer science seminar at MIT, I corrected, as a favor to my alma mater. The rest of my time is spent running my company. The company that now owns this estate, the summer house, and most of the Morgan family holdings. Patricia stood shakily. This isn't possible. You've tricked her somehow. Manipulated her. Mr. Sullivan cleared his throat. I have here a video recording of Mrs. Morgan explaining her decisions. She insisted on making it, again anticipating your reactions. He pressed play on his tablet. Grandma Aliner's face filled the screen, as sharp and elegant as ever. If you're watching this, I'm dead, and my darling vultures are trying to contest my final act of business. She smiled her infamous smile, the one that had terrorized social climbers for decades. To my step-grandchildren, Marcus and Victoria, you never understood what the Morgan name truly meant. You thought it was about money, about status. You spent years pretending to care about me while planning how to spend my fortune. Victoria flinched. Marcus looked away. To Patricia, you married my son for his name and stayed for my money. Don't bother denying it. I've known since you tried to access my accounts during his funeral. Patricia sank back into her chair, her face ashen. But Elizabeth, Grandma's voice softened. Elizabeth understood. She saw the Morgan legacy for what it was. Not just wealth, but innovation, creation, the drive to build something meaningful. While you all were lounging by my pool and planning my death, she was building an empire. In secret, just like I did 60 years ago, when everyone said a woman couldn't run a business. I remembered that conversation, late one night in her study. How she'd recognized the code I was working on, understood its potential. How she'd looked at me and seen not just her granddaughter, but a kindred spirit. So yes, Grandma continued, I sold her everything. Not gave, sold. Because Elizabeth understands that true value isn't in what you're given, but in what you earn. She paid full market price, through her own company, with her own money. Money she made while you were all sneering at her little teaching job. The recording ended. In the silence that followed, you could hear the antique grandfather clock ticking away the seconds of their entitlement. Now, I said, pulling out a stack of folders, let's discuss your living arrangements. Our what? Marcus's voice cracked. Your rental agreements. While I have no intention of evicting you immediately, you'll understand that as the new owner, I need proper contracts in place. Market rate rent, of course. Market rate? Victoria looked faint. But I don't have. An income? I finished. Yes, I know. Fortunately, Morgan Innovations is always hiring. Your resume is a bit thin, but I'm sure we can find you an entry-level position, something where you can learn actual skills. Marcus drew himself up, trying to regain some dignity. Now see here, this is our home. No, I cut him off. This was Grandma's home, which she sold to me. Your sense of entitlement doesn't constitute ownership. I opened the first folder. Now about that MBA you claim to have. The color drained from his face. Fraud is such an ugly word, I continued. I prefer to think of it as an opportunity for growth. You can either sign a legitimate rental agreement and accept a position in our corporate compliance department, where you'll learn about actual business ethics, or you can try explaining your fake credentials to the board of your investment firm. Your choice. Patricia stood up, smoothing her designer dress. Elizabeth, Surely we can discuss this reasonably. As family. Family? I looked up at her. Like when you canceled my college fund after Dad died? Or when you told the country club I was unfortunately unstable when I started my company instead of joining your social circle? She sat back down. Mr. Sullivan, I said, please distribute the rental agreements. They have until Friday to sign or vacate. Victoria burst into tears. Real ones this time, not the calculated sobs she usually employed. Marcus looked like he was having trouble breathing. Patricia just sat there, probably calculating how many of her society friends would hear about this. Oh, and one more thing, I added, picking up Grandma's favorite fountain pen. The staff, Hannah, George, everyone you've been treating like servants instead of the family they actually are, they all get to stay, with significant raises and full benefits. Through the window, I could see George tending the roses we planted together. Hannah appeared in the doorway, carrying a tea service, Grandma's best china. Your usual Earl Grey, Miss Elizabeth? She asked, her eyes twinkling. Yes, thank you, Hannah. I sat back in what was now my chair, in what was now my library, in what had always been my true home. I believe we have some long overdue changes to discuss. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't just taking back what's yours. It's using it to build something better than they could ever imagine. 3 months after the inheritance revelation, the Morgan estate had transformed. The East Wing, once Marcus's private party haven, now housed Morgan Innovations' new AI research center. The pool house where Victoria had spent countless hours sunbathing had become a state-of-the-art conference facility. And Grandma Aliner's beloved gardens had been expanded, with a new sustainable greenhouse that powered half the property. I sat in the library, my library now, reviewing the latest changes when Hannah brought in my morning coffee. The contractors finished the solar installation, she reported, setting down the cup. And Miss Victoria actually arrived on time for her training session today. That made me look up. Really? How's she doing? Sarah in HR says she's showing surprising aptitude for project coordination. Once she stopped complaining about having to work, that is. I smiled, remembering Victoria's face when I'd explained that her new entry-level position included managing the estate's renovation projects. You want me to work with contractors? She's learning, I said, taking a sip of coffee. How's Marcus adjusting to the compliance department? Hannah's eyes twinkled. Well, after he accidentally exposed his own fake MBA during his first audit, he's been surprisingly dedicated to understanding actual business ethics. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. Marcus, who'd spent years bragging about his business acumen, was now learning the basics from entry-level compliance training. My phone buzzed. A message from Mr. Sullivan. Patricia's here. Says it's urgent. I sighed. Send her in. Patricia entered looking distinctly less polished than usual. The designer outfits had been replaced by something more practical, and her perfect manicure showed signs of actual work. Elizabeth, she began, then stopped, taking in the changes to the library. The antique furniture remained. Grandma's taste had always been impeccable, but now it shared space with cutting-edge technology. Holographic displays showed real-time business data, while the old oak shelves held both leather-bound classics and digital archives. The country club board meeting was this morning, she said finally. Ah, so that's what this was about. They're revoking my membership. Her voice cracked slightly. Apparently, living in rental property doesn't meet their ownership requirements. How unfortunate, I said mildly, remembering all the times she'd used that same club to exclude me. Though I hear the public golf course is quite nice. Elizabeth, please. She sank into a chair. I know I've made mistakes. Mistakes? I set down my coffee, like canceling my college fund, or telling everyone I was mentally unstable when I started my company? Or perhaps you mean the mistake of trying to access Grandma's accounts during my father's funeral. She flinched at each example. I was wrong. About everything. About you. Yes, I agreed. You were. I'm not asking you to forgive me, she continued. But I'd like to understand. How did you do it? Build all this while we thought you were just a teacher? Just the quiet stepdaughter you could safely ignore. I stood, walking to the window. The garden below was full of activity. Employees enjoying the new outdoor workspace. Researchers discussing projects among the roses Grandma and I had planted. I learned from Grandma Eleanor, I said finally. Not just about business, but about power. Real power isn't in showing off or pushing others down. It's in building something meaningful while everyone underestimates you. She always saw something in you, Patricia admitted. I used to be jealous of how much time you spent together. She saw herself. I turned back to face her. A woman who built an empire while society told her to just be decorative. Did you know she bought her first company using money she made selling her own jewelry? Her husband, Grandpa Morgan, thought she was just maintaining her social connections, but she was actually building a network of investors. Patricia looked thoughtful. I never knew that. No one did. That was the point. I sat back down, pulling up some files on my tablet. Speaking of points, I assume you're here about more than just the country club? She straightened in her chair. Yes, I'd like to work. A real job, not just charity boards and social committees. That I hadn't expected. The renovation project, she continued. I've been watching Victoria learn about it, and I have experience with historical properties. From all those museum boards I sat on, I thought maybe. I studied her carefully. The perfectly curated facade had cracked, revealing something almost genuine. The Heritage Conservation Team does need a coordinator, I said slowly. Someone who understands both historical value and modern functionality. But I held up a hand as hope flickered across her face. It's not a glamorous position. No assistant, no expense account. Just hard work preserving what matters while building something new. Like what you've done here, she gestured to the library. Exactly. I pulled up a contract. You'll report to Victoria. 2. Victoria? She blinked. She's earned it. Turns out when you actually give people a chance to prove themselves, they sometimes surprise you. I sent the contract to her email. Take the weekend to think about it. After she left, Hannah reappeared with fresh coffee. That was generous of you, she said. We'll see if she actually takes it. I checked my schedule. The board meeting starts in 10 minutes. Is everything ready in the new conference room? Yes, though Marcus is nervous about presenting his first compliance report. I smiled. Good. A little nervousness keeps people honest. The estate hummed with activity as I walked to the conference room. Employees, many of them local kids who'd never dreamed of working in tech, collaborated in spaces that had once hosted only idle gossip and social climbing. The old Morgan money had transformed into something productive, innovative, meaningful. In the hall, I passed the portrait of Grandma Eleanor in her prime, elegant, sophisticated, and secretly powerful. The artist had captured the gleam in her eye, that hint of hidden strength that most people missed. My phone buzzed again. A message from my CFO. Stock hit another record high. The Sustainable Energy Division is exceeding all projections. I typed back, "Good. Implement the employee stock option plan we discussed. Time to share the success." Victoria appeared around the corner, looking surprisingly professional in a business suit that probably cost less than her old handbags. "Monthly project review is ready," she reported. The Heritage team hit all their targets, and the new greenhouse design won that sustainability award. "Good work," I said, watching her try to hide her pride. "How's Marcus doing with his presentation?" Terrified, she smiled slightly. "But he actually understands the material now, and he hasn't mentioned his fake MBA in weeks." We entered the conference room together, the same room where they'd once tried to exclude me from the inheritance meeting. Now it was filled with actual business leaders, innovators, and employees who'd earned their positions. Marcus stood at the podium, wearing a modest suit and a nervous expression. Patricia sat quietly in the back, taking notes about the historical features we were preserving. And through the windows, George tended the gardens where Grandma and I had planned all this years ago. Ready to begin? I took my place at the head of the table, because sometimes the best revenge isn't just succeeding, it's creating a legacy that transforms everyone it touches, even those who never thought they needed transformation. And as I looked around at what the Morgan estate had become, I knew Grandma Alina would be proud. Not just of me, but of how her final chess move had forced everyone to become better versions of themselves. The antique clock chimed 10, and I called the meeting to order. After all, we had an empire to run, the right way, this time. The Harrison family name meant something in this city. It was etched into the skyline, quite literally, with the Harrison Technologies logo crowning our 40-story headquarters downtown. My grandfather had built the company from nothing. My father had expanded it internationally. And now my Uncle Marcus was determined to keep it in the right hands. The right hands, of course, meant his son Bradley's hands, not mine. Never mind that I'd graduated summa cum laude from MIT while Bradley barely passed business school. Never mind that I'd been coding since I was 12, while Bradley still needed help setting up his email. No, in Uncle Marcus's world, the right hands meant male hands. I straightened my blazer as I walked through the marble lobby of Harrison Technologies, nodding to security guards who'd known me since I was a child running through these halls. My heels clicked against the floor, not designer ones like my cousin Olivia wore, but practical, comfortable ones. The kind you wear when you're actually working, not just playing at. "Morning, Ms. Harrison," Tom at reception called out. "Big day today." "Just another shareholders meeting, Tom." He smiled knowingly. "If you say so." The executive floor was buzzing with activity. Today's meeting wasn't just any shareholders meeting. It was the one where Uncle Marcus would officially announce Bradley as his successor. The fact that he'd called it 2 days after I submitted my formal proposal to modernize our entire tech infrastructure wasn't a coincidence. "Sarah," Bradley's voice boomed across the office. "Didn't expect to see you here. Thought you'd be off working on your little side projects." My little side projects. That's what they called my consulting work, the private contracts I took on nights and weekends. Work that had quietly built me a reputation in the tech world, not that anyone in the family bothered to notice. "Wouldn't miss it," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. The boardroom was already filling up. Uncle Marcus held court at the head of the table, Bradley at his right hand. My father would have been on his left, but he passed away 3 years ago, leaving his shares to me. shares that Uncle Marcus had been trying to buy ever since. "Sarah, darling," my Aunt Patricia air-kissed my cheek. "That's a interesting choice of outfit." I glanced down at my simple black suit. No fancy labels, just clean lines and good tailoring. "It's practical." "Of course, dear." She patted my arm condescendingly. "So like you to be practical." I took my seat as Marcus called the meeting to order. The usual business first: quarterly reports, market projections, development updates. Then came the moment everyone was waiting for. "As you all know," Marcus began, "Harrison Technologies has always been a family company. Today, I'm proud to announce the next generation of leadership." Bradley sat up straighter, adjusting his Rolex, a gift from Marcus for his last birthday. "However," Marcus continued, "before we make that announcement, we need to address another matter." He looked directly at me. "Sarah has submitted a proposal for what she calls a complete technological overhaul of our systems." The room shifted uncomfortably. Everyone knew Harrison Technologies had been falling behind our competitors, but no one dared say it out loud. While we appreciate Sarah's enthusiasm, Marcus's voice dripped with condescension. "We feel her ideas are too radical, too untested. She's not qualified to make these kinds of suggestions for our company." "Uncle Marcus," I spoke up, "the proposal is based on actual market research. Our current systems are outdated. We're losing clients to more innovative competitors." "Losing clients?" Bradley scoffed. "We just signed Global Tech last month. They're the biggest player in the industry." I bit back a smile. Right on cue, the boardroom door opened. "Sorry I'm late," a familiar voice called out. Traffic was terrible. Every head turned to see James Morrison, CEO of Global Tech, walking in. But he wasn't looking at Bradley or Marcus. His eyes found me immediately. "Sarah," he beamed. "There's my favorite CEO. The board's still raving about that AI integration you designed for us. Revolutionized our entire operation." The color drained from Uncle Marcus's face. Bradley's mouth hung open. "James," I stood to shake his hand, "I didn't expect you here today. Wouldn't miss it. Not after what your team accomplished with Project Phoenix." He turned to the stunned room. "Oh, you all knew about that, right? How Sarah's company, Phoenix Technologies, has been quietly transforming the industry. The AI systems she built for us increased our efficiency by 300%. Marcus gripped the table. "Your company?" I pulled out my tablet, projecting onto the main screen. "Yes, Uncle Marcus, my company. The little side projects you've been mocking? They were contracts with major tech firms. Global Tech was just the latest." Charts and graphs filled the screen. Project completions, client lists, revenue streams, all under the Phoenix Technologies banner. "That's impossible," Bradley sputtered. "You've been here, working entry-level contracts." "Part-time," I corrected, "while building my own empire. An empire that just acquired controlling interest in Dawson Systems." Another shocked silence. Dawson Systems was Harrison Technologies' biggest competitor. "But," Marcus's voice shook, "but Dawson sold to a private investment group." "Phoenix Ventures," I supplied. "My investment group, which now owns 30% of the tech firms in this city, including, as of this morning, a controlling interest in Harrison Technologies." I clicked to the final slide, a breakdown of company ownership. There was my father's inherited shares, combined with stock I'd quietly bought through subsidiaries over the past 2 years, plus proxy votes I'd secured from other shareholders who'd lost faith in Marcus's leadership. You see, Uncle Marcus, I stood, straightening my practical blazer. While you were focused on keeping me in my place, I was focused on building something better. And now, I smiled. Now I don't need your approval to implement my proposals. I have the votes. James Morrison chuckled from his seat. I'd say you underestimated the wrong Harrison. The boardroom erupted in chaos. Bradley stormed out, his expensive shoes squeaking on the polished floor. Aunt Patricia looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. And Uncle Marcus just sat there, staring at the numbers that proved how badly he'd misjudged me. The shareholders' meeting will reconvene in 1 hour, I announced. We have some leadership changes to discuss. As the room cleared out, Tom from reception appeared with a coffee, my usual order. Still just another shareholders' meeting, Ms. Harrison, he grinned. I took the coffee, remembering all the times I'd grabbed an extra cup for Bradley or Marcus, playing the dutiful niece, while quietly building my own legacy. No, Tom, I smiled. This one's different. This one's just the beginning. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't just proving people wrong, it's proving yourself right in ways they never saw coming. The hour between meetings felt like watching a storm roll in. I sat in my father's old office, kept exactly as he'd left it, though Uncle Marcus had tried multiple times to have it modernized. Through the glass walls, I could see the chaos unfolding. Bradley was in the break room, tie loosened, arguing furiously into his phone, probably calling his trust fund manager, checking if he could afford to leave the company. He couldn't. I'd already confirmed that his expensive lifestyle had left him deeply in debt. Aunt Patricia fluttered between groups of shareholders trying to damage control, her perfectly manicured hands gesturing frantically as she attempted to spin the situation. But the numbers on my presentation had been clear, undeniable. My phone buzzed with messages. From James Morrison. Brilliant show. Board meeting at Globaltech next week. We should discuss expansion plans. From my CFO, Michael. Dawson Systems transition complete. Their tech team is ready for integration. From Bradley's wife, Victoria. Whatever he's done, please don't cut him off completely. The kids' private school. I ignored them all, focusing instead on the email I was crafting to the entire Harrison Technologies staff. They deserved to hear about the changes from me directly, not through gossip and speculation. A knock at the door interrupted my typing. Come in. Eleanor Chen entered, the company's head of legal for 30 years, and one of the few people who'd known about my parallel empire building. She'd been my father's closest advisor, and after his death, she'd become mine. The vultures are circling, she said, closing the door. Marcus is in his office with 3 lawyers. Bradley's calling every contact he has, and the shareholders are choosing sides. I smiled. Let them. The numbers don't lie. No, she agreed. But Marcus will try to fight this. He's claiming you violated family trust, acted in bad faith. While he what? Systematically excluded me from leadership, ignored my warnings about our outdated systems, tried to force me to sell my inherited shares. I stood, walking to the window. Everything I did was legal. You made sure of that. Yes, but... She hesitated. Sarah, he's talking about your father, saying you betrayed his legacy. That hit harder than I expected. I turned back to face her. My father built this company on innovation, on seeing possibilities others missed. Uncle Marcus turned it into a boys' club, running on outdated tech and nepotism. Who really betrayed the legacy? Before she could answer, My phone buzzed. A message from Tom at reception. Your mother's here. I hadn't expected that. Mom had stayed out of company politics since Dad died, focusing on her charitable foundation instead. Her arrival now meant things were about to get complicated. Send her up. Eleanor gathered her files. Want me to stay? No, but be ready for the shareholders' meeting. Marcus won't go down without a fight. Mom entered moments later, looking exactly as I remembered from childhood. Elegant, composed, and impossible to read. Quite a morning, she said, settling into one of the visitor chairs. Your uncle's having what appears to be a stroke. He'll survive. Bradley's wife is crying in the ladies' room. She should be more concerned about their credit card debt. Mom studied me carefully. You've been planning this for years, haven't you? Since the day Uncle Marcus patted me on the head and said I should focus on finding a husband instead of learning coding. I met her gaze. Since he started grooming Bradley for a position he couldn't handle. Your father, she began, would be proud. I finished firmly. He taught me everything I know about business, including the part about keeping your cards close until you're ready to play them. A small smile touched her lips. He did always say you were the smartest one in the family. She reached into her bag, pulling out a worn envelope. He also left this for you. Said to give it to you when the time was right. I think this qualifies. The envelope contained a single sheet of paper, a letter dated 3 months before his death. Dear Sarah, if you're reading this, you've finally done it. Taken control. Proved what I always knew, that you were born to lead, not follow. Marcus never understood that innovation doesn't care about gender or age. It cares about vision. I've watched you building your own empire in secret, using the lessons I taught you about patience and strategy. I've seen your name rising in tech circles while the family remained oblivious, too busy protecting their own positions to notice the future passing them by. You're probably wondering why I didn't stop Marcus from sidelining you. Truth is, you needed that challenge. Needed to build something on your own, without the family name opening doors. What you've created is yours, truly yours. The company is changing. Technology is changing. The old ways won't work anymore. Harrison Technologies needs a leader who understands that. Who can bridge the old and the new? Make me proud, sweetheart. Show them what a Harrison can really do. Loved, Dad. I folded the letter carefully, fighting back tears. Mom reached across the desk, squeezing my hand. He knew, she said softly. He always knew you'd be the one to save the company. A knock at the door. Eleanor again. It's time. Everyone's reassembling. I stood, straightening my blazer, ready to watch Uncle Marcus's world implode. Mom smiled, a real smile this time. Lead the way, CEO. The boardroom had transformed in the past hour. The chaos had crystallized into clear battle lines. On one side, Marcus's old guard, looking nervous. On the other, younger executives and shareholders who'd seen the writing on the wall. Bradley's seat was conspicuously empty. Marcus stood as I entered, his face tight with barely controlled rage. Before we continue, I have something to say. No, I cut him off, taking my place at the head of the table. You've done enough talking. For years, actually. I nodded to Eleanor, who began distributing folders. These are the new organizational charts, effective immediately. Harrison Technologies is merging with Phoenix Technologies. Our systems will be fully integrated within 6 months. You can't do this. Marcus slammed his hand on the table. This company is my legacy. No, Uncle Marcus, it's my father's legacy. and he left it to me for a reason. I clicked to the first slide of my new presentation. Now let's talk about the future. The real future, not the outdated version you've been clinging to. As I outlined my vision for the company, AI integration, quantum computing, blockchain innovation, I watched the room shift, the old guard's resistance crumbling in the face of actual progress, the younger executives leaning forward, energized by possibility. James Morrison, still there from earlier, caught my eye and nodded approvingly. He knew what this meant for the industry, knew that Harrison Technologies was about to become a true tech leader again, not just a family business running on reputation. Uncle Marcus stayed silent, but his face said everything. The empire he thought was his was slipping away, transforming into something he couldn't control or even understand. And I was just getting started. One more thing, I said as I concluded the presentation. Bradley's office will be converted into our new AI development lab. He can clear it out by tomorrow. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't just taking control, it's using that control to build something better than they ever imagined possible. 1 month into my leadership of Harrison Technologies, the changes were already visible. The stuffy old executive floor had been transformed into an open concept innovation hub. Bradley's former corner office now housed a team of AI developers, their whiteboards covered in algorithms that would have made him dizzy. I sat at my desk, my father's old desk, reviewing the latest project proposals when Maya, my new executive assistant, appeared. "Your uncle's here." I didn't look up. "Which one?" "Marcus. He's different today." That made me pause. Uncle Marcus had spent the past month alternating between threatening legal action and attempting to rally old board members against me. Last week, he'd even tried to suggest to the press that I'd somehow coerced my father into leaving me his shares. Different how? No suit. No lawyers. He looks tired. I checked the security feed. Marcus stood in the lobby, wearing Chakis and a polo shirt, an outfit I'd never seen him in before. He kept touching the visitor's badge like it was burning him. Send him up. While waiting, I pulled up the latest company numbers. Share price up 40% since the merger announcement. 3 new major clients signed. Employee satisfaction scores highest in company history. And most tellingly, our technological capabilities now ranked in the industry's top 5, up from 20th place under Marcus's leadership. He entered without his usual bluster, looking older than I remembered. "Sarah," he gestured to the chair across from me. "May I?" I nodded. He sat, taking in the changes to the office. Dad's old awards still lined the walls, but now they shared space with cutting-edge tech displays and real-time system monitoring screens. "The lobby's different," he said finally. "More alive." We removed the barriers between reception and the innovation lab. Let visitors see actual work happening. "I saw Bradley yesterday," he continued. He's not doing well." I pulled up another screen. "He's interviewing with Jensen Corp tomorrow. Entry-level position, but it's a start." Marcus blinked. "You're helping him?" "I'm helping his kids. They shouldn't suffer for their father's failures." I met his eyes. "Just like I shouldn't have suffered for yours." He flinched but didn't argue. "Progress, of sorts." "Your father," he began, then stopped. Started again. "Your father saw something in you. Something I refused to see." "You refused to see a lot of things," I said, "including the fact that this company was dying under your leadership. We were profitable. We were stagnant. living on reputation and old contracts while the world changed around us. I stood, walking to the window. Did you know Dad came to my MIT graduation? Of course, the whole family. No, I cut him off. He came to my actual ceremony, not just the family celebration after. He sat through the technical presentations, watched me demonstrate my AI protocols. He understood what I was building. The AI that's now revolutionizing our systems, Marcus said quietly. The AI that could have revolutionized them years ago, if you'd listened. I turned back to face him. Why are you here, Uncle Marcus? He pulled out an old photo from his pocket. Him and Dad as young men, standing in front of the original Harrison Technologies building. We had dreams back then, big dreams. Somewhere along the way, I forgot what they were. Started focusing on maintaining instead of building. And now I'm watching my niece rebuild our company into something I don't fully understand, but something that matters again. He placed the photo on my desk. I'm not here to fight anymore, Sarah. I'm here to learn. I studied him carefully. Learn what? Everything. The AI systems, the new development protocols, even basic coding if that's what it takes. I want to understand what we're becoming. If you'll have me, not as an executive, not even as a manager, just as someone who wants to be part of the future instead of clinging to the past. I sat back down, pulling up another screen. Our new development training program starts next week. 4 months, intensive study. Most participants are fresh out of college. I'd be the old man in the room. You'd be a beginner, like everyone else. I met his gaze. No special treatment. No family shortcuts. Just hard work and actual merit. Think you can handle that? For the first time in years, I saw genuine humility in his eyes. I'd like to try. Monday, 8 a.m. sharp. Don't be late. I turned back to my work, then added, and Uncle Marcus? Leave the suits at home. Developers care about code, not clothes. He stood, straightening his polo shirt self-consciously. Thank you, Sarah, for not just pushing me out. That's not what Harrison Technologies is about anymore. We build things here, including people. After he left, Maya brought in the afternoon reports and a fresh coffee. Bradley's wife called, she said. The kids' tuition is taken care of through next year. Anonymous donation. I nodded. Good. And the new tech scholarship program? Fully funded. First class starts next semester. 15 students from underprivileged backgrounds. Full ride plus internships. Make it 20, I said. And make sure they know there's a place for them here after graduation. Merit-based, of course. Of course. She paused at the door. Your mother called too. The family wants to do dinner. I thought about it. About all the family dinners where I'd sat quietly, while Bradley boasted and Marcus planned, and everyone assumed they knew what success looked like. Tell them yes, I said finally. But here, not at the house. I want them to see what we're building. That evening, working late as usual, I added another photo to the wall. Not the old one of Marcus and Dad, but a new one taken at last week's hackathon. Dozens of developers, including several who'd been with me secretly at Phoenix Technologies, all working together to create something revolutionary. In the background, you could see my father's old awards, reminding us where we came from. But the future? The future was in the lines of code filling the whiteboards, in the young faces eager to innovate, in the way we were transforming a family business into a true tech leader. My phone buzzed. A message from James Morrison. Board meeting tomorrow. ready to show them what real innovation looks like. I smiled, looking out over the city where Harrison Technologies had always been a landmark, but was now becoming a beacon. Always ready, I typed back. After all, the future belongs to those who build it. And we were building something extraordinary. The next morning, I arrived early as usual. Tom was already at his post in the redesigned lobby, watching young developers stream in with their coffee and laptops. "Morning, Miss Harrison," he called out. Another big day. I spotted Uncle Marcus in the crowd, clutching a laptop of his own, looking both nervous and determined. "No, Tom," I smiled. "Just another day of building the future." Because sometimes the greatest revenge isn't in tearing down the old power structures, but in transforming them into something better than anyone imagined possible. Even family. The lake house had always been our family's crown jewel. Perched on the edge of Lake Windsor, its weathered cedar shingles and wraparound porch had graced countless family photos and holiday cards. 3 generations of winters had spent summers there, watching sunsets paint the water gold while plotting their futures. I adjusted my blazer, simple, black, tasteful, as I walked into the lawyer's office. My sister Audrey was already there, of course, wearing something designer and inappropriate for a will reading. Dad sat beside her, his silver hair perfectly coiffed, while Mom dabbed at dry eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. They were nothing if not committed to appearances. "Catherine," Dad nodded curtly, "you're late." "By 2 minutes," I replied, taking a seat across from them. Traffic from the airport. Still flying commercial. Audrey wrinkled her nose. God, that must be awful. I didn't bother telling her I'd flown private, my company's jet. Not that they knew about it. They all thought I was still struggling along at my little tech startup, trying to make it in a man's world. That's what Dad always called it, usually while suggesting I come work for him instead. Mr. Davidson, the family lawyer, cleared his throat. "Now that everyone's here, we can begin." He adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses, shuffling papers importantly. "As you know, we're here to discuss the distribution of assets following Harold Winter's retirement." "Semi-retirement," Dad corrected quickly. "I'm just restructuring things." "Right, because having a stroke last month and being forced to step down was all part of his master plan. Of course," Davidson continued smoothly, "the main item of discussion is the distribution of property, specifically the Lake Windsor estate." Ah, there it was, the real reason for this meeting. The lake house had been in our family for generations, passed down from father to son until my grandfather had the audacity to only produce my father, who in turn had the misfortune of having 2 daughters. "I've given this a lot of thought," Dad began, using his CEO voice, the one that had terrorized boardrooms for 30 years. "The lake house is a significant responsibility. It needs someone who understands its heritage." I bit back a smile. Heritage. That's what he called the country club memberships, the summer yacht parties, the careful cultivation of the right sort of connections. Never mind that the property had been mortgaged to the hilt 5 years ago when his company hit troubled waters. Waters he'd refused to see coming. "Therefore," he continued, "it's decided. Audrey deserves the lake house more." Audrey preened, already mentally redecorating. Mom sniffed appropriately into her handkerchief. "After all," Dad added, looking at me, "you're so busy with your project in the city. You wouldn't have time for the responsibilities of maintaining such a property." My project, my rapidly growing tech company that had revolutionized artificial intelligence in healthcare. The one that had made me a billionaire before 40. Not that they'd bothered to read any of the business news articles about it. Besides, Audrey smirked, I'd practically lived there already. All those charity events I host, the connections I maintain, the wild parties you throw when Dad's not looking, I supplied helpfully. The ones that got written up in the gossip columns last summer. She flushed. That was a networking event. If you say so. I opened my laptop, typing in my password. But before we proceed, there's something you should probably know about the lake house. What's to know? Dad waved dismissively. I'm giving it to Audrey. The decision's made. Actually, I turned my screen around. You can't give away something you don't own. The property records filled the screen. Clear, official, undeniable. Owner, Catherine Winters, as of 5 years ago. What? What is this? Dad's face went from confident to confused to alarming red in seconds. Property records, I said calmly. From when the bank was about to foreclose. Remember that summer, Dad? When the company was in trouble and you'd leveraged everything, including the lake house? Mom's handkerchief dropped to the floor. Audrey's perfect mouth hung open unattractively. That's impossible, Dad sputtered. The bank. We worked something out. No, Dad. I worked something out. I bought the mortgage, paid it off, transferred the deed to my name, all while you were busy telling everyone you'd handled it like always. Mr. Davidson cleared his throat again. I can confirm these records are accurate. The Lake Windsor property has been under Ms. Catherine Winters' ownership for the past 5 years. But why didn't you say anything? Mom finally found her voice. Would you have listened? I met her eyes. When have you ever listened to me about anything important? The silence that followed was heavy with decades of dismissed achievements and ignored warnings. You can't do this. Audrey stood up, her designer dress rustling dramatically. Daddy, tell her she can't do this. Actually, she can, Davidson interjected. And given that the property's mortgage history shows multiple missed payments before Ms. Winters' acquisition, she quite possibly saved it from bank possession. I closed my laptop quietly. I've maintained the property, paid the taxes, even kept on old Mr. Jenkins as groundskeeper. Though I doubled his salary and gave him health insurance. You've been paying Jenkins? Dad looked like he might have another stroke. But I've been sending him checks, which he's been returning to your account. I finished. On my instructions. I wanted to see how long it would take you to notice. 5 years, Dad. 5 years of checks being returned, and you never once checked the accounts. Mom started crying then. Real tears this time, not the decorative kind she usually employed at country club functions. But what about my summer parties? Audrey wailed. My social connections? You mean the parties that almost got the property seized by the police twice? I raised an eyebrow. The networking events that led to 3 lawsuits I quietly settled. She sank back into her chair, suddenly looking very young and very lost. The lake house isn't a toy, I said quietly. It's not a status symbol or a party venue. It's the last piece of our real family heritage, before everything became about appearances and social climbing. And I protected it, just like I tried to protect the company before Dad stopped listening to my warnings about digital transformation. My company is fine, Dad snapped, but without his usual conviction. Your company's stock dropped 60% last quarter, I corrected. You're losing market share to tech-focused competitors, which is why I bought controlling interest last week. That was the other bomb I'd planned to drop today. Might as well get it all out at once. You what? Dad gripped the armrests of his chair. We can discuss the company later. I stood up, gathering my things. For now, let's focus on the lake house. I'll have my assistant send over the summer schedule. You're all still welcome to use it, under proper supervision, with signed agreements about liability and behavior expectations. Like children, Audrey spat. You're treating us like children. No, I headed for the door. I'm treating you like the irresponsible adults you've proven yourselves to be. Mr. Davidson will send over the paperwork. Oh, and Audrey? The next time you want to throw a networking event, try actually networking. Your Instagram followers don't count as business connections. I left them there, surrounded by their shattered assumptions and crumbling pride. Through the window, I could see the lake in the distance, its waters calm and unchanging. Just like the truth I'd been protecting all these years. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't just owning something, it's being the only one who truly understood its value in the first place. The drive to the lake house felt different now that everything was in the open. My Tesla glided silently along the familiar curves of Lake Windsor Road, past the gates that now had my company's security system discreetly installed. Mr. Jenkins waited at the end of the driveway, his weathered face breaking into a warm smile. Ms. Catherine, he touched his cap. They've been calling non-stop. I expected as much. I handed him a coffee, his usual order from the artisan roaster in town. Any actual emergencies? Well, he chuckled. Miss Audrey tried to get in with a moving van this morning. Said she was claiming her rightful property before you could change the locks, which were already changed last week. I finished, remembering the security update notification on my phone. How did she take it? Had quite a fit. Threatened to call the police until I showed her the new property registration and security protocols. Then she peeled out in that fancy car of hers, spraying gravel everywhere. He shook his head. Your father showed up about an hour ago. He's waiting on the porch. Of course he was. Dad had always treated the lake house's wraparound porch like his personal throne room, holding court while overlooking his domain. Except it wasn't his domain anymore. Thanks, Howard. Take the afternoon off. Full pay, of course. Actually, he hesitated. I'd rather stay, in case they come back. I nodded, understanding his loyalty. He'd watched me grow up here, had taught me to fish off the private dock while Audrey complained about the smell. He'd been the one to quietly alert me when Dad started missing mortgage payments 5 years ago. Dad stood as I approached, trying to maintain his CEO posture despite the slight tremor in his left hand, a remnant of the stroke that he pretended hadn't changed everything. Catherine, he began, then stopped, taking in my appearance. The simple blazer he'd mocked earlier was Armani. The practical flats were Louboutin. Small details that spoke of wealth. Real wealth, not the leveraged lifestyle he'd maintained. You look successful, he said finally. I am successful, Dad. You just never bothered to notice. He sank into one of the handcrafted Adirondack chairs, the ones that had specially made by local artisans, replacing the gaudy imported furniture Audrey had insisted on. The company, he said, staring out at the lake. You really bought controlling interest. 47% of voting shares. I took the chair opposite him. Another 15% in proxy agreements with board members who've lost faith in the current leadership. Lost faith? His voice cracked. I built that company. And then you stopped building, stopped innovating, refused to see that the market was changing. I pulled out my tablet, bringing up the company financials. Look at these numbers, Dad. Really look at them. He did, and I saw the moment reality finally broke through his denial. The declining profits. The market share bleeding to tech-focused competitors. The innovation gap that was becoming a chasm. It's not too late, I said quietly. The company has good bones, a strong foundation. It just needs to evolve. Under your leadership, he said bitterly. Under competent leadership. Something you used to understand before you started caring more about your golf handicap than quarterly R&D reports. That hit home. He'd missed 3 board meetings this year alone, all for golf tournaments. And the lake house? He gestured around us. Was this just another hostile takeover? No, Dad. This was me protecting our real legacy. The one place in our family that still meant something true. I stood up, walking to the porch railing. Remember teaching me to sail out there? Before Audrey turned the boat dock into a floating cocktail bar. He smiled despite himself. You were a natural. So focused, so determined to understand every detail. The same way I was focused on warning you about the company's tech gaps, about the market shifts you ignored. The smile faded. Catherine, I tried to tell you, Dad. For years I tried. But you and Audrey were too busy playing aristocrats to see what was happening. The missed mortgage payments, the declining market share, the competitors eating away at your core business. So you just took over? Secretly bought everything out from under us? No, I turned back to face him. I built something of my own first, made my own fortune, my own name. Then I protected what mattered while you were busy pretending nothing needed protecting. My phone buzzed, a notification from the security system. Audrey's back. With Mom this time. The Mercedes swept up the driveway moments later, gravel crunching under expensive tires. Mom emerged first, still dadding at her eyes. Audrey stormed up the steps, designer heels dangerous on the wooden boards. Did you change the dock access codes too? She demanded. My friends are coming this weekend for the regatta. You mean the illegal poker games you've been hosting on my boat? I raised an eyebrow. The ones that violated 3 state gambling laws. She deflated slightly. Those were networking opportunities. They were stupid risks that could have cost us everything. Again, I pulled out another tablet, bringing up surveillance photos. Like these little gatherings? The ones with certain controlled substances being passed around. Mom gasped. Audrey went pale. I've spent 5 years protecting this property, I continued. From bank seizure, from police raids, from your networking disasters. And now, I gestured around us. Now it's going to be what it was always meant to be. A family legacy, not a party venue. But it's summer. Audrey wailed. The social season is canceled, I finished. At least your version of it. The lake house will still host events. Charity fundraisers. Real ones, not tax write-offs. Environmental symposiums. Youth sailing programs. Sailing programs? Dad looked up sharply. Like the ones you used to run, I nodded. Before everything became about status instead of substance. Mom sank into a chair, looking around like she was seeing the place for the first time. The carefully maintained gardens. The historic architecture preserved instead of modernized. The subtle security systems protecting it all. You've been maintaining everything, she said softly. All this time. Someone had to, I replied. Someone had to remember what this place really meant. Audrey opened her mouth, probably to protest again, but a commotion from the driveway interrupted her. A group of kids, maybe 12 or 13, were piling out of a van marked Lake Windsor Youth Sailing Academy. Right on time, I checked my watch. The first class of the summer program. Summer program? Dad stood up, watching the kids excitedly pulling on life jackets. You're really teaching kids to sail? Yes, starting with those who could never afford lake access before. I smiled at Howard, who was already heading down to help with the boats. Some things are worth more than social status, Dad. Some legacies are about more than just money. The kids' laughter carried across the water, bright and real and full of possibility, just like the lake house used to be before we all grew up and forgot what mattered. You can stay, I told my family. Watch what this place is supposed to be. Or you can leave and keep pretending nothing's changed. Your choice. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't just taking control, it's restoring something to its true purpose, even if others have forgotten what that purpose was. 3 months after the revelation at the lawyer's office, Lake Windsor sparkled under a perfect summer sunset. The sound of children's laughter mixed with the gentle lapping of waves against the dock, so different from the thumping bass of Audrey's parties that used to echo across the water. I stood on the porch, watching the last sailing class of the day return to shore. Howard Jenkins supervised as the kids properly stowed their gear, teaching them the same respect for equipment and tradition that he'd once taught me. They're good kids, a familiar voice said behind me. Quick learners. I turned to find Dad watching the scene, leaning slightly on his cane, a concession to reality he'd finally accepted after the second minor stroke scare. They appreciate the opportunity, I replied, unlike some people who took it for granted. He nodded slowly, lowering himself into one of the Adirondack chairs. Like I took the company for granted? That was new. Dad admitting mistakes wasn't exactly a family tradition. The board meeting went well today, I said, taking the chair beside him. The tech integration plan is ahead of schedule. So I heard. He managed a small smile. The stock's up 30% since you took over. The same analysts who used to kiss my golf shoes are now calling you a visionary leader. Funny how that works. You know, he turned to face me. I actually read your original proposal. The one you sent 3 years ago, warning about our technology gap. You mean the one you dismissed as unnecessary panic and feminine overthinking? He flinched. I was wrong. About everything. The company, the lake house. You. Before I could respond, the sound of tires on gravel announced another arrival. Audrey's Mercedes pulled up, but something was different. Instead of her usual designer outfit, she wore simple business casual. Her hair was pulled back practically, and she carried a laptop instead of a designer bag. Sorry I'm late, she called out, hurrying up the steps. The coding class ran over. I raised an eyebrow. Coding class. She flushed slightly. After everything, I started taking some courses. Thought I should understand what's actually happening in the company instead of just planning parties. She paused. The instructor says I have a knack for user interface design. She does, Dad confirmed. Been helping the tech team make the new systems more user-friendly. Turns out all those years of social networking taught her something useful about how people interact with technology. I studied my sister, seeing her clearly for maybe the first time. The practiced artifice was gone, replaced by something almost genuine. The summer program kids miss you. Howard called up from the dock. They said you promised to teach them about digital navigation systems. Audrey actually brightened. That's right. I brought the demonstration models. She hurried down to the dock, her practical shoes handling the wooden steps with ease. She's different, I said quietly. We all are. Dad replied. Had to be. You didn't leave us much choice. Mom appeared from inside, carrying a tray of lemonade, not the fancy cocktails she used to insist on, but the same recipe Grandma used to make. The foundation paperwork is ready, she said, setting down the tray. The Lake Windsor Youth Education Fund. Full scholarships for sailing and technology programs. She smiled slightly. I even convinced the country club ladies to donate. Amazing how interested in education they became when they realized you're now one of the richest women in the state. I took a glass of lemonade, watching as Audrey set up her demonstration on the dock. Kids gathered around her, genuinely interested as she explained how modern navigation systems worked. You know, Dad said thoughtfully, I never told you about my father, your grandfather, and how he got the lake house. He inherited it, I said, like you were supposed to inherit it. No, Dad shook his head. He bought it, secretly, while everyone thought he was failing in business. Built something new while the family thought he was embarrassing them. He looked at me. Sound familiar? I remembered the old photos in the library, the ones I'd actually studied while Audrey used the room for selfie backgrounds. Grandfather William, the one they called Wild Will, because he invested in automobiles when everyone else was still betting on horses. The same, Dad nodded. He waited until the perfect moment, then showed them all who'd really understood the future. He sighed. I forgot that legacy. Got caught up in maintaining instead of building. But you're more like him than anyone. From the dock came a chorus of wow, as Audrey demonstrated something on her tablet. Howard stood nearby, smiling proudly at his newest batch of students. The fall program starts next week, I said. We're adding coding classes to the sailing lessons, teaching kids that technology and tradition can work together. Integration and innovation, Dad mused, just like what you're doing with the company. Speaking of the company, I pulled out my tablet. The board approved my new proposal. We're creating a heritage division, preserving the best of our history while building for the future. It needs a director. He straightened. Catherine. Someone who understands both where we came from and where we need to go. Someone who's learned the hard way what happens when you stop innovating. I slid the tablet over. Interested? He picked it up with slightly shaking hands. You trust me, after everything? Trust is earned, I said firmly. Just like respect, just like success. You taught me that once, before you forgot it yourself. Mom appeared with more lemonade, just as Audrey's students broke into applause. The sunset painted everything in gold. The water, the dock, the familiar shingles of the house that had seen generations of winters learn, fail, and grow. I found something in the library, Mom said softly, pulling out an old photograph. From the day your grandfather bought the lake house. The picture showed William Winters standing proudly on these same porch steps, a subtle smile playing on his lips. Behind him, his own family looked on with mixed expressions of shock and dawning respect. History repeats, Dad said, looking from the photo to me. Only if we learn from it, I replied. Down at the dock, Audrey was wrapping up her lesson. The kids helped pack up the equipment, showing the same care Howard had taught me years ago. One young girl lingered, looking up at the house with dreaming eyes. That'll be yours someday, Howard told her, following her gaze. If you work hard and learn well. Ms. Catherine proved that anything's possible here. I smiled, remembering being that girl, having those dreams. The lake house had always been magic, not because of its monetary value or social status, but because of its ability to inspire, to teach, to transform. The next board meeting is Thursday, I told Dad. The Heritage Division presentation is first on the agenda. He nodded, a familiar spark of purpose returning to his eyes. I'll be ready. I know you will be, I said. Just remember, we're not in the business of maintaining anymore. We're in the business of building. As the sun set on another Lake Windsor evening, I watched my family slowly finding their real purpose. Mom organizing educational programs instead of social events. Audrey teaching instead of partying. Dad learning to build again instead of just preserving. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just proving people wrong. It's helping them become right. And as the last light painted the lake in shades of possibility, I knew Grandfather William would have approved. Because true legacy isn't about what you own. It's about what you build, what you teach, and what you leave better than you found it. That's what the lake house had always been meant for. That's what we had all finally learned to see.